Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 8, The Fire Philosophy of the Templars, from The Philosophy of Fire by R. Swinburne Clymer. The Fire Philosophy of the Templars. The great men and inquiring spirits among the Templars had penetrated to the very depth of the mystery of the ever-living supernatural fire and had taught it to their neophytes as they themselves had been taught by the Saracens. It is readily believable that at the suppression of this grand, warlike and monastic order, whose members were so bound by injunctions and the vows of the secret formula that they could not deny part of the accusations nor yet explain why. Many of the things of which they were accused, such as magical ceremonies and so-called pagan rites, trances and innocent sacrifices, etc., were satisfactorily established to those who wanted them to be proven guilty in their trials, as matters of which they were indisputably guilty. We know they had their rites and ceremonies, and that these rites and ceremonies had a different meaning from that interpreted by religious fanatics and self-constituted investigators who knew nothing of the sacred religious practices and self-imposed penalties practiced by such men who lived for God and religion. We know there was nothing more in the denouncement and extinction at the same time all over Europe of these religio-knightly or monastic military orders, in whose ranks fought and taught men of the most powerful and most daring understanding of the period, than the jealousy of their power, fear of their influence, and the desire for the riches and worldly accumulation they possessed. We further realize that secret and forbidden studies, as in all fraternities, were pursued by them, that under the protection and yet in the refusal, as it seemed to the profane and religious fanatic of the cross, and as from behind their holy and militarily wondrous character, the arch-leaders among them, whether chieftains of mind or of arms, closely hung on the track of philosophy until it vanished into transcendentalism, or the so-called, because many of the current religious beliefs are no more accepted by them than they are at this time by the members of the secret schools, atheistic, and by occult and Kabbalistic means established relations with the unseen, as we do today, seeking to hold communications with the world invisible. This single statement made by the author, when interpreted by the religious fanatic of even the present day, would indicate that the writer upholds spiritualism. The fact is, man, when he understands, can communicate with the invisible realms of being by many other than spiritualistic means. The reason we are so certain such a statement might be misinterpreted is because of late experiences, wherein a book written by us showing the difference between spiritism and spiritualism has been produced as evidence against us to prove we upheld spiritualism, when in fact we have always and do now condemn every system of negative development, no matter what its name. If this can be brought about in this so-called free and enlightened age, when every man is supposed to be guaranteed freedom to practice his religion as he pleases, so long as such practices do not interfere with the liberty of others, what chance did the Templars have, who, tried and judged by those who wanted them condemned and destroyed as heretics, could not and would not deny they were able to hold communication with worlds invisible? The round form of their temples, as they were styled by the Brotherhood, their various insignia and habits, their secret book, their rites, all seem to bespeak a knowledge, and do so speak to the initiate of the fire philosophy, misunderstood and perverted in the hands of all those except of the order who had risen to the highest knowledge in it, and who attained leadership into the indulgence of sensual appetites and the denial of the future life, and consequently of the fullest and of morally darkest, though the most wordly luscious Epicureanism. In the philosophy taught by the secret schools, we do not uphold the forgiveness of sins, justification by faith, and vicarious atonement as usually understood. In a recent hearing before a court, some of these lessons and writings, which can only be had under a religious vow, were produced against us by one who accused us of working for the devil and who had deliberately broken open private, locked cases, wherewith to attempt to prove we did not believe in the divinity of Christ and a future life. If such things can be brought against those who admittedly teach a clean mode of living, a pure morality, and a high code of ethics, what chance would one have who actually and openly denied the possibility of life after death and the existence of a supreme being? This was not the fault of the beautiful philosophy known and taught by the Templars, but of those would-be followers who did not attempt to understand and who had no desire to follow the true teachings, but instead sought an excuse for their miserable outrages. Whilst the chiefs of the Order of the Templars had penetrated to truths the most astonishing, though necessarily undivulgeable, especially in that superstitious and ignorant age of which incontestably they were far advanced, they paid the usual penalty for their great knowledge in being decried, ending by being burnt as magicians, simple because the time was not prepared, if indeed any time can be, for that which they could tell. They and their whole body, therefore, appeared in the exaggerations of the Church and in the magnifying medium of the terror which their doings inspired, as thirsting for seemingly impossible things, climbing, as in their cowls and mail, as a storming ladder of presumptuously supposed lightning-proof steel, and under the mask and shield of the cross which they were accused of denying, into the imagined accursed, according to the profane, chambers of magic, devilish fire, the treasure house or home or hell of the forbidden gods, rich in all possible ethereal and human splendor. The Templars did only that which we of the present school are doing, and we as they are being accused of almost all of the things they were, even as working for the devil, denying the divinity of Christ and preaching a doctrine of free love, all because we maintain and teach that man must gain immortality through service to mankind and purification of self, demanding equal opportunity and justice to all, rich and poor alike. The famous Beauseant, or banner of the Templars, was part-colored, that is, divided down the center in two halves of black and white. This figuring forth of the utterly opposed colors is generally taken to signify the immitigable hatred of the Templars for the infidels, but their abiding love and benignity towards the Christians. This total friendship or uncompromising abnegation would be heraldically denoted in the perfect contrast of the black and the white halves, or fields, of the Templars' ensign divided party purpay. But when we remember that the Egyptians mythed their perfect divinity or cause of all under of this world, the hopeless, empty color of black, in opposition to white or matter light, which was taken to signify this world and the glory of this world, and when we recall that the proper robes or vestments of the Magians, when invested in their Kabbalistic panoply and armed for charms, as directed by the authentic formula, are of the colors white and black, we grow into another sort of belief regarding the meaning of this Templar banner, mystic as it is, and we conclude that it fell back for its real hieroglyph upon the fire creed and fire philosophy, this faith of the fierce deistical East and of the Gefre, Gub, or Gower, and this surely not without reason. Nor did the Order of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, who in the grandeur of their stately galleys made of the Mediterranean a royal sea, and elevated the islands of Malta and of Rhodes almost into the splendors of an empire set on the water. Nor did this order escape the imputation of wrongdoing, of being betrayed in the signs and the hieroglyph of the secret, reprobated, infidel doctrine. Their colors, the fashion of their arms, and their attire, in which, in the priestly or any other orders or communities, lies much of meaning, glancing up to justifiable Christian suspicion in the wizard heretical half-light. In short, it is held that the Teutonic Knights or the soldier monks of St. John of Jerusalem, as equally as the Templars, were very questionable Christians. Though this imagined infidelity might be only confined to the heads of the chapters, the great body of the Knights being merely directed. In the persecutions of the Knights Templars, which are generally known, a certain mystification and secrecy may be observed, as if the whole of the charges against them were not brought publicly. This arose from various causes. The persecuted were really very religious and were bound by the most solemn Masonic oaths, and Masonry was intimately connected with these matters, not to divulge the secrets of the order. The impression is very general that these persecutions were undertaken for the sake of the wealth of the order. This is not the only reason. There were other and deeper reasons, hate, jealousy, and fear among them. The so-called heathenish doctrines to which allusion has been made are visible everywhere in the curious mystical figures always seen upon the monuments of the Templars, in the fishes bound together by the tails, in the tombs of Italy, and appearing on the vaulting of the Temple Church, London. in the astrological emblems on many churches, such as the zodiacs on the floor of the Church of Saint Irenaeus at Lyon, and on a church at York, and Notre Dame at Paris, and Bacchus, or the god IHS, filling the wine cask, formerly on the floor of the Church of Saint Denis. Again in the round churches of the Templars, in imitation of the round church at Jerusalem, probably built by them in the circular or cycler or Gilgal form in allusion to various recondite subjects, and in the monograms I, H, E, and XH in thousands of places. We of the present day know these doctrines were not heathenish in any sense, that they had and still have the most wonderful mystical meaning, furthermore that they figure in all true initiation and in all the philosophies. Symbolism has never been understood by the masses, and ever a strange and absolutely false meaning will be given to these symbols and ceremonies by those who do not, and never can, understand them. Perhaps it is well this is so. At every turn we meet with some remnant of so-called paganism. It is a rather extraordinary thing that the Christian Templars should call themselves Templars in honor of the temple, the destruction of which all so-called Christians boasted of as a miraculous example of divine wrath in their favor as Christians. This then goes to prove that the Templars are much older than the Crusaders, and the pretended origin of these people is totally false. There is a certain suspicion entertained by scholars, not without reason, that the origin of this community may be looked for in the College of Kashi and the Temple of Solomon in Kashmir, or the lake or mere of Kashi. The Gymnosophists, the Chaldeans, the Essenes, through whom Jesus received his initiation, the Therapeutai later, and at present the Rosicrucians, the Dionysians, the Eleusinians, followers of the Essenes, the Pythagoreans, who were really Rosicrucians. The Chaldeans were in reality all an order of religionists, who combined in their religion both philosophy and mysticism, including among them those who were in fact the heads of the societies. Nor must it be forgotten that the Masons of the present day have been time and again termed anti-Christ, because they do not give Jesus any place in their precepts or ceremonies. Therefore, this modern order is under the ban of certain religious sects, especially those of the evangelical and Methodist persuasion. The Teutonic Knights seem to have been the first instituted, but it is thought that they were grafted upon a class of persons, charitable devotees, who had settled themselves, as the historians say, near the Temple of Jerusalem, to assist poor Christian pilgrims who visited it. Although the real temple had disappeared even to the last stone for 1,000 years. This proves how little use these historians make of their understanding. The Teutonic Knights are said to have come from Germany, from the Teutonic tribes. Let us hasten to relieve North Germany from the weighty and undeserved honor. The word Teut is Tat, and Tat is Buddha. The name of Buddha with some of the German nations was Tuisto or Tuisco, derived from whose name comes our day of the week, Tuesday. From Tuisto or Tuisco came the Teutones, Teutiski, and the Teutonic Knights, and the name of Mercury Tusco, perhaps Mercury Trismegistus. The round church of Jerusalem, built by Helena, the mystic Helena, daughter of Coilus, mother of Constantine, who was born at York, and the chapter house at York and other cathedrals were reproductions of the circular Stonehenge and Abury, home of the ancient Druids. The choirs of many of the cathedrals in France and England are built crooked of the nave of the church for the same reason, whatever that might be, that the Druidical temple is so built at Clachannis in Scotland. All the round chapter houses of our cathedrals were so built for the same reason that the Church of the Templars were round. In these chapters and the crypts till the 13th century, the secret religion or true fire philosophy was celebrated for away from the profane vulgar. These buildings have been thought to be the representative successors of the caves of India, and afterwards of the cupola-formed buildings there, of the Cyclopean treasury of Atreus at Mycenae, and of the labyrinths of which we read in Egypt, Crete, Italy, and other countries. These labyrinths could be only for the purpose of religious practices, and it is not to be doubted, of that religion of the Cyclops which universally prevailed. The underground crypts of our cathedrals, with their forests of pillars, were labyrinths in miniature. There is something about the circular churches of the Templars which seems very remarkable. We have only 4 in England, we believe, of the churches of the Templars, namely those in London, at Maplestead in Essex, at Northampton, and at Cambridge, and they are all round. This form, we are told, was adopted in imitation of the round church at Jerusalem. But how came the Church of Jerusalem to be round? Perhaps phallus worship had something to do with this form. We are led to believe so, at least. Again, how came these Christian knights to be called by the name of the detested Jewish temple? The Templars were divided into orders exactly after the system of the assassins, knights, esquires, and lay brethren answered to the refec, fedavi, and lasique of the assassins. As the prior, grand prior, and grand master of the former correspond to the Dai al-Kabir and Sheikh of the mountain of the latter. Unquestionably, the Ansirith of the Syrians, living round about the Ansirith mountains, have the most perfect doctrine of sex and the sex fire known to any nation of the earth. Though these people might trace their lineage to the distant past, whence history remains unknown, in 1865, when Dr. P.B. Randolph visited Syria and was initiated into the mystery of the Ansirith by the then Sheikh of the Brotherhood, he found the doctrine untarnished by either vulgarism or debasement. As the Ishmaelite refec was clad in white with a red mark of distinction, so the Knight of the Temple wore a white mantle adorned with a red mark of distinction, the Red Cross. It is remarkable that they were called illuminators, and it is to be suspected that the red mark of distinction, kept back as common to both Templars and Ishmaelites, was a red 8-point cross, or a red rose on a cross. The Templars were accused of worshipping a being called Baphomet and Baphomet, the devil, or Karuf, just as we, the initiates of the secret schools, have been, and now are, accused of working for the devil. Von Hammer says that this word, written in Arabic, has the meaning of called, and is what Kikri calls anima mundi. It is difficult not to believe that this Karuf is our calf. The assassins are said to have worshipped a calf. If these latter had a calf in use as an emblem, it may be justly considered as a proof that, contrary to the prevailing ideas concerning them, they are a tribe of extreme antiquity, a branch of the Atlanteans, though holding the doctrine of the 10 incarnations, yet still clings to the ancient worship of Taurus. There is a picture in Russia of the Holy Family, in which the calf is found instead of the ram. A learned author pronounces that the doctrine of the Assassins and the Templars were the same, and who may say the Templars did not have their inception in Syria? All temples were surrounded with pillars recording the number of the constellations, the signs of the zodiac, or the cycles of the planets, and each templum was supposed in some way to be a microcosm, or symbol, of the temple of the universe, or of the starry vault called templum. It was this templum of the universe from which the Knights Templars took their name, and not from the individual temple at Jerusalem, built probably by their predecessors and destroyed many years before the time allotted to their rise. But which rise, it is suspected, was only a revivification from a state of depression into which they had fallen. The Rosicrucians of the present day teach this identical doctrine, that man must, through development, become the perfect temple. St. John taught this also when he said, "Know ye not ye are the temples of the living God?" This is the reason the Rose Cross does not have any ceremonial initiation until after the neophyte has become the initiate, then only to personify the stages of growth through which he had passed. See Temple of the Rosy Cross by Freeman B. Dowd. Theatres were originally temples where the mythos was scenically represented, and until they were abused, they were intended for nothing else. But it is evident that for this purpose a peculiar construction of the temple was necessary. When Scaurus built a theatre in Greece, he surrounded it with 360 pillars. The temple at Mecca was surrounded with 360 stones, and in like manner, with the same number, the templum at Iona in Scotland was surrounded. The Templars were nothing but one branch of the secret schools of that age, from whence sprang Masonry, a branch to which the care of some peculiar part of the temples was entrusted. There is a probability that the name of Templars was only another name for Chaldeans. In the western part of Asia, in the beginning of the 12th century, the sect or religious tribe called Ishmaelites or Batinians or Assassins arose. These assassins were first noticed in the Western world with their chief Hakem Bermrila, or Hakem Biamr Allah, who was held up in Syria as the 10th avatar, or as it is assumed, incarnation. His ideas of God were very refined. The first of the creatures of God, the only production immediate of his power, was the intelligence universelle, which showed itself at each of the manifestations of the divinity on earth. By means of this minister all creatures were made. He was the mediator between God and man. This intelligence universelle is the Logos, Rasir, or Aviatar. It would seem probable that the followers of Bermrilla were originally adorers of Taurus, or the calf, or calves, which they continued to mix with the other doctrines of Buddha. It must be remembered that this worship of the calf is not to be taken in its literal sense, but is only a symbol of the Lamb, or Christos, the hidden living fire indwelling in all men and coming from God, love. Chaldean implies Sabaean, another sect of fire worshippers or fire philosophers. The word Chaldean is a corruption of the word Chasdim. This is most clearly the same as the Colida and Colchida and Colchis of Asia and as the Colidae and Culdees of Scotland. Now all this and the circumstances relating to the Chaldees, often called mathematici, to the Assassins, the Templars, Manichaeans, etc., being considered the name of the Assassins or Hassessins or Assanites or Chassians or Alcashisin will not be thought unlikely to be a corruption of Chasdim and to mean Chaldees or Culdees, and possibly connected with the Templars. We can thus trace them in no other way. When the Arabic emphatic article al is taken from this hard word al-Chaschishin, it is Chashischin. The Assassins were also called Druses or Druisians. The learned author of the Celtic Druids states that he has proved these Druses to be both Druids and Culdees. In all accounts of the Assassins, they are said to have existed in the East in considerable numbers. B. de Tudela states he found these numerous not far from Samarkand or Balkh, and also described many great tribes of what he calls Jews, living, speaking the Chaldee language, occupying the country, and possessing the government of it. He further states that among these Jews are disciples of the wise men. He tells us that they occupy the mountains of Hapton. Here are, it is to be thought, the Afghans, and that too clearly to be disputed. Under the word Hapton lies the word Zaigan, and the disciples of the wise man Hakem frequented the temples of Solomon in Kashmir and were called Hakmites, Ishmaelians and Batinians, that is, Budians. The word Hakem is the word HKN, which in the Chaldee means wise. All physicians in the East are called Hakem. All this helps to prove not only that the Templars did share doctrines with the Assassins and Ishmaelians, but that they were much older than the Crusaders. Furthermore, that the pretended origin of these people is totally false. The Gymnosophites, the Cassidians, the Essenes, the Therapeuti, the Dionysian, the Eleusinians, the Pythagoreans, the Chaldeans, the Assassins, and the Budians were all orders of philosophical religionists, including among them, and consisting in great part of an order of monks, who were, in fact, the heads of these societies. There is no doubt that all the caliphs of the Saracens were, secretly or openly, Sophies. The Sophies are divided at this day into many sects, and in their 4 stages they have a species of Masonic or Eleusinian initiation from lower to higher degrees, and this order, it may be truthfully said, has some of the greatest mysteries in their possession now held by any order or fraternity in the world. Sir John Malcolm says that Hassan Saba and his descendants were a race of Sophies and that they were of the sect of Batanea, that is Buddha. They were Templars or Cassidines or Chasdim or followers of Ras or Masons. The use of the pallium or sacred cloak to convey the character of inspiration was practiced by the Imams of Persia, the same as practiced by Elias and Elisha. This is continued by their followers to this day. When a person is admitted to the highest degree, he will receive the investiture with the pallium and the samak. When the Grand Seigneur confers honor on a person, he gives him a pelisse, a pall, a plough, a sacred cloak, a remnant of the old form. From this comes the word palls at our funerals. One of the names which excites the greatest curiosity as to its meaning of the chief of the Assassins was Old Man of the Mountain, Senex de Montibus. The boudoir of Scotland was called Old Man, and Buddha in India means Old Man. The opinion that the Assassins were Buddhists receives confirmation, in part from the idea that he was reckoned as representative of the Ancient of Days. The representative idea or form or figure by which the prophet speaks of the divine intelligence, ancient of days, whose hair was wool of a white color. But in Persian, according to Sir John Malcolm, the word Sophie means both wisdom and wool. It is possible that from this idea we obtain the white goat's hair cloaks of the Albanians with their snowy samis and their shaggy capote, the white burnous of the Moors, the white robes of the Carmelites, nay, the sacred acceptation and the supposedly enchanted value of the color white generally. That the renowned and feared tribes of assassins, or Ishmaelites, whose history presents such an inextricable connection with that of the Templars, and also with that of the Hospitallers, were acquainted with, if not professors of, the fire philosophy of Zoroaster, so little understood by the profane, from which indeed they derived their atheistic desperation, will be apparent when we examine their belief. What was really the object of the worship of the Knights Templars in their secret synods, none but the initiate can know. Whether indeed in their intercourse with infidels they had not imbibed some of the ancient traditionary ideas and learned the religion of the inhabitants of that part of Asia, bounded by Persia on the one hand and by the Mediterranean on the other, seems a point more readily settled in the affirmative. In this view, flame worship would have passed a part of the adopted rites. We are thus brought to contemplate the Templars not so much in the light of a new superstition as in the brilliancy of the philosophic position of the Magi in the old world of thought, and of the Rosicrucians, brethren of the Rosy Cross, or Illuminati in the new. Lamps and cloisters, lamps and altars, lamps and shrines, lights and tombs, lights, fire everywhere are connected ideas. The romance lingering and brightening about these strange subjects may have its origin in the real philosophic, unsuspected truth which gives life to their meaning even for all time. Romance never has life except for the truth that underlies it. With these fires among the graves, with the ultimate and funeral burning, with the pyre of the classics and the fire immolations of the Orientals, with the sacred fire of the Magi, now as in the past, and the cressets and the torches of the Christian nightly fraternities, we connect the ever-burning lamps, always representing true love and immortality to the initiate, and merely heathenism to the masses and profane of which we have archaeological accounts, and the suspected Ishmaelitish, Bohemian, or fire-worshipping mysticism, which is no less than fire or love-god worship, harbored as the strange thing among the cowls and stoles, amidst the crosses and the books, and glancing as the fiery-crested snake, which is a symbol of love and fire wisdom, from among the resplendent arms of the supposed by the profane renegade Templars. To this striking object of tomb lights, incoherent in any other view than as the attestation through the ages of a universal though secret faith, Walter Scott, accidentally and unconscious of its meaning, makes reference when he adjures the dying lamps as burning. Before thy low and lonely urn, O gallant chief of Otterbourne, and thine, dark knight of Liddesdale, the grave of the mighty dead, Michael Scott, the wizard of such dreadful fame, he also says that within it burned a wondrous light, which lamp shall burn unquenchably, which means the soul, the fire, the love in man. The only serious hold which it is possible to gain over the minds of men is through the influence of the supernatural. It is absurd and inconsequential to believe that all the wonderful effects caused by the Templars and other fraternities of devotees, which seemed bound by a religion produced in their time, could have sprung from no higher motive than the desire to aggrandize, to overpower, to rule, to force. Wonderful things, unbelievable things, miraculous things, impossible things must have been offered to the common sense of the men of the age before they would have given in to the authority which became to them as that of angels, of spirits, and of gods. It is no slight task to master the resisting common sense of the world, that which is invincible except at conviction. Instincts at detection were as strong then as now. We are accustomed every day to the infallible judgments of common sense. That decision as to what a thing is as independent of us as the sense of light. Quick wit, sharp wits, hardness of unbelief, suspicion, the same reason as is at work now. These were identical in the Dark Ages. In any age in which man was man, prophecy must have been wonderfully verified. The assumed magic must have been demonstrated real, something not at all a fraud. First, before imaginative and enthusiastic men themselves could believe it. Second, before plain men could accept that which material sense assured was impossible. There existed in those secret societies the dreams, trances, visions, and foreknowledge which made princes of the seers. It is in this secret medium, whatever it may be, whether conjured out of the capacity of man in the intoxication of narcotics, through fumes, anointings, training, or lapsing out of the prisoned sense into the unimprisoned sense, it is in their new world that the explorers stumble upon unbelievable, though real things. Of a piece with the miraculous provision obtained by the Grandmaster of the Templars, in his agony, as noticed hereafter, were the two following instances of forecasting, which, as far as can be affirmed by records, are definitely established. The priestess Phoenix, the daughter of a Chaonic king, foretold the devastating march of the Gauls, and the course which they would take from Europe to Asia, together with the destruction of the cities, and this a generation before the event happened. The king Furus had received an oracular sentence that he was destined to die as soon as he had seen a wolf fighting with a bull. The sentence was fulfilled when in the marketplace, or Argos, he saw a bronze group representing such a combat. An old woman killed him by throwing down a tile from a house. The Assassins, as a secret sect, had a university among them. The course of instructions in this university, according to Secrecy, by following 9 degree. The object of the first section of instruction, which was long and tedious, was to infuse doubts and difficulties into the minds of the aspirant, and to lead him to repose with a blind, admiring confidence in the knowledge and wisdom of the teachers. To this end, he was perplexed with extraordinary and seemingly unanswerable questions. The absurdities of the literal sense of the Quran and its repugnance to reason were studiously pointed out. Dark hints were given that beneath the shell of the philosophy taught lay a kernel sweet to the taste and nutritive to the soul. But all further information was most rigorously withheld from the inquiring mind until the disciple had consented to bind himself, by a most solemn oath, to absolute faith and obedience to his instructor. In the second place, when the aspirant had taken the prescribed oath, he was admitted as a member of the 2nd degree, in which was inculcated the acknowledgement of the particulars appointed by God as the sources of all knowledge. This included science and the arts and facts of life. The 3rd degree included the knowledge of farther important facts and the connection and succession and power of those facts. It also informed the student what was the number of the blessed and holy imams. This was the mystic 7, for as God hath made 7 heavens, 7 earths, seas, planets, metals, tones, and colors, so 7 was the number of the noblest angels, spirits, or attributes of God. Religion as yet was not outstepped. In the 4th degree, the pupil learned that God had sent 7 lawgivers into the world, each of whom was commissioned to alter and improve, or rather to develop, the system of his predecessor. That each of these had 7 helpers who appeared in the interval between him and his successor. These helpers, as they did not appear as public teachers, were called the mute, samit, in contradistinction to the speaking lawgivers. The 7 lawgivers were Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Ismail, the son of Jafar. The 7 principal helpers, called Seats, Sus, were Seth, Shem, Ismail, the son of Abraham, Aaron, Simon, Ali, and Muhammad, the son of Ismail. It is justly observed by the discerning hammer that, as this last personage was not more than a century dead, the teacher had it in his power to fix on whom he would as the mute prophet of the time, and to inculcate the belief in and obedience to him of all who had not gone beyond this degree. The 5th degree taught that each of the 7 mute prophets had 12 apostles for the dissemination of his faith. There were 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 months, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 joints in the 4 fingers of each hand, and so forth. This all proves that this school was founded on facts that were absolute and not to be contradicted then or even at the present time. In the 6th degree, the disciple, being carefully led thus far, and his mind duly prepared for what followed, the Quran and the precepts contained in that book of authority were once more brought under consideration. And he was told that all the positive portions of religion, all the facts of faith, must be subordinated to the laws of nature and reconciled to the lights of philosophy, or be rejected as perhaps necessary to the comprehension, though intrinsically worthless. In fact, man herein was thrown back upon nature and taught to discover the exterior influences alone in it. Then succeeded, for a long space of time, instructions in the system of Aristotle. When considered fully qualified, the scholar was admitted to the 7th degree, in which knowledge was imparted in the mystic pantheism which is held and taught by the sect of the Sufis. Von Hammer argues an identity between the two orders, as he styles them, of the Ishmaelites and the Templars, from the similarity of their dress, their internal organization, and their secret doctrine. The color of the caliphs of the house of Umayyah was white. Hence the house of Abbas, in their contest with them, adopted black as their distinguishing hue. Hassan Sabah, when he formed the institution of the Fedavi, or the devoted to death, assigned them a red girdle or cap. The mantle worn by the members of the hospital was black. The last Grandmaster of the Templars, Jacques de Molay, together with his companion Guy, brother of the Dauphin of Auvergne, was brought forth and placed upon a pile erected upon that point of the islet of the Seine at Paris, where afterwards was erected the statue of Henry IV. It was a day of March the 19th, as it is stated by the historians, 1314. The two unfortunate Templars suffered with constancy, to the last asserting their innocence of the things with which they were accused. The spectators wept and shrieked at the spectacle of their sacrifice. During the night, their ashes were gathered up to be preserved as relics. Molay, ere he expired, summoned Clement, the Pope who had pronounced the bull of abolition against the order and had condemned the Grand Master to the flames, to appear within 40 days before the Supreme Eternal Judge, and Philip to the same awful but just tribunal within the space of a year. Both predictions were fulfilled, and thus was justice meted out. The pontiff did actually die of a colic on the night of the 19th of the following month. More dreadful still, the church in which his body was deposited in state took fire, the flames spread, and the corpse of Clement was half consumed. The king, before the year had elapsed, by an accidental fall from his horse, suffered such injury that he died. The fulfillment of these two prophecies showed to what knowledge the master of the order had achieved and produced marvelous effect. The unfortunate Templars were justly regarded as martyrs. We know that the general, nay the universal belief to the contrary, that the order of the Knights Templars in certain forms has continued down to the present day. The King of Portugal, in his dominions, formed the Order of Christ out of the Templars. The Freemasons also were connected with the ancient Templars, and there is a society bearing the name of Brethren of the Temple, whose chief seat is at Paris, and its branches extend into various countries and into England. Jacques de Molay, in the year 1315, in anticipation of his speedy martyrdom, appointed Johannes Marcus Lormenius to be his successor in his dignity, and there has been an unbroken, though secret, succession of the Grand Masters down to the present time. That the secret doctrines of the Templars were partaken of by the Knights of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, we also have proof. Signor Rossetti, who possessed a very intimate acquaintance with the history of the Hospitallers, maintains stoutly that there is much in common between the doctrines taught in the higher grades of Freemasonry, more also that has been lost, and the views, formulae, and fashions of the Order of the Temple. True Masons who appreciate the spirit of their fraternity as well as the rituals know that Masonry, at least in part, sprang from the Templars. Lost in the clouds of antiquity, the dim forms of the male Templars disappear. Their buildings, their churches, their haunts remain. But the inhabitants are passed into the shadows. Their remembrances and their secrets only survive in the quaint courts of the temples. The fact that their dwelling place was once within the present purlieus of law, that the notes of their wild Eastern music and the ceremonies of their strange, deeply mystic worship were, in the time that has almost become a dream, real matters in the story of those, at present so unromantic buildings, truths amidst this wilderness of mechanical law-spelling. These things of a life so unlike our present form of existence lend an interest to the very name of the temples yet standing, holding their secrets as ever and defying the crude and unnatural investigations of the profane, but so well known to the true initiate. There exist real personal memorials of this antique and wonderful body of the Templars, preserved in secret at the present time in Paris. Some of the archives and statutes, portions of the unexamined history, even some of the mystic banners, and an assortment of the arms of the Brotherhood still survive. These are kept in unknown but not in obscure or dilapidated buildings, as some, for want of knowledge, seem to think. Strange that the world should think the secrets of such a mighty sect of fire philosophers, once living, should ever die. It is impossible. God does not permit it to be. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.